Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. In this session, we'll be discussing a new chapter, the 5th chapter of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. This chapter is entitled Narada's Instructions on Srimad-Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. The first verse of this 5th chapter of the first canto of Bhagavatam, Suta Uvacha Atatam Sukhamasina Upasinam Brihatshavaha Devarshi Praha Viprarshim Veena Pani Smayanniva. The meaning is that Suta Goswami said, thus the sage amongst the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the Rishi amongst the Brahmanas, Vedavyasa. So the background for this verse is that in the previous chapter, towards the end, it was described that when Vyasadeva was feeling incomplete and he was trying to find the cause for his feeling dissatisfaction, just at that time, Narada Muni arrived in the ashram of Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva stood up and respectfully received Narada. And when Narada was comfortably seated, then the description continues now. Narada is described as Devarshi. He is the sage amongst Rishi, amongst the Devatas. Devarshi, amongst the demigods. And Vyasadeva is described as Viprarshi, Rishi amongst the Vipras, amongst the Brahmanas. So, Devarshi is addressing the Viprarshi. Narada is addressing Vyasadeva. And Narada is apparently smiling. So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to this verse, Narada was smiling because he well knew the great sage Vedavyasa and the cause of his disappointment. Narada knew that Vedavyasa was doing a lot of work for the welfare of the people of Kali Yuga, and somehow he was, after doing a lot of work, he was not satisfied at heart. And the cause for his disappointment also was known to Narada. As Narada will explain gradually in this chapter, Vyasadeva's disappointment was due to insufficiency in presenting the signs of devotional service. All the compositions of Vyasadeva so far, before he compiled the Srimad-Bhagavatam, all the other compositions of Vyasadeva were not sufficiently describing devotional service. And that was exactly the reason why Vyasadeva was feeling incomplete. He was feeling dissatisfaction. Narada knew this defect and it was confirmed by the position of Vyasa. Vyasadeva, his position was that he was reflecting on what work he had already done, and he was also trying to find the cause for his feeling dissatisfaction in spite of having done a lot of work. The next verse describes Narada addressing Vyasadeva. Narada uvacha parasharya mahabhaga bhavatat kacchidatmana paritushyati sharira atma manasa evava. The meaning of this verse is, addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara. Vyasadeva's father's name is Parashara Muni. Narada inquired, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? So this is a question that Narada is asking Vedavyasa. What is the question being asked? Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? Self-realization is the business of human life. Human life is not meant for sense enjoyment. Human life is meant for self-realization, realizing who I am. And generally people think in terms of I am this body, or they think I am the mind. But scriptures explain the self or the spirit soul or the real person inside the body is different from the gross body, and the subtle mind is different from the body and mind. So, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport to the second verse, this was a hint by Narada to Vyasadeva regarding the cause of his despondency. Vyasadeva was becoming very dissatisfied and feeling insufficient in the heart. The reason for this was being pointed out by Narada, first of all by giving a hint. Now Vyasadeva, as the descendant of Parashara Muni, a greatly powerful sage, had the privilege of having a great parentage, which should not have given him cause for despondency. Vyasadeva had taken birth as the son of a great sage, Parashara Muni. So as the son of such a great sage, Vyasadeva should not have had any cause for becoming dissatisfied or feeling insufficient. Being a great son of a great father, he should not have identified the self with the body or mind. The common people in this world, they identify their self with the body, or some people identify the self with the mind. So, what is the meaning of this identifying the self with the body? This is also called bodily conception of life. Now, I am a living living person. I am different from all other material objects which are dead matter. So I am not the same as dead matter. I am living person. Now, what exactly is meant by living person? The scriptures say living person doesn't mean the body, doesn't mean my body, doesn't mean my mind. I am a living person means I am not this body, I am not the mind. I am spirit soul, different from the body and mind. Even though this is the fact that every living person is different from the body and the mind, still they are unable to understand this, they are unable to realize this, they are unable to perceive this. And most people live life of ignorance. Neither the system of education, at least in the modern times, does not enlighten people about who they are. The same ignorance continues even through the education system. Simply, people are taught how to do something for earning a livelihood, or they are taught how to secure the maximum sense enjoyment. But that is never going to satisfy the real self. That is never going to satisfy the soul. That's never going to satisfy the real you or real person. It is superficial. The satisfaction at the level of the body or the level of the mind is superficial satisfaction. It doesn't touch the soul. It doesn't penetrate the inside of the body and mind. So therefore, the point being made here is Vyasadeva was a great personality, so he should not have identified himself with the body or mind. Actually, the fact is Vyasadeva had not identified in that way. He was enlightened and he was rightly situated as a self-realized personality. So, Prabhupada says in the purport further, ordinary men with a poor fund of knowledge can identify the body as self or the mind as self. Ordinary people, their whole life they live thinking either that I am the body or thinking I am the mind. That's how most people live their entire life. And they are born with the ignorance. They continue in ignorance because they don't get the proper knowledge or they are unable to make the proper inquiry and get the understanding. And they die in ignorance. They die in ignorance. The same ignorance about the self. And this is the greatest misfortune of the people in general. That because they die in ignorance about the real self, they have to take birth again, and in the next birth also they will identify with the body or the mind and live an entire life in that ignorance, again die in ignorance. So you can just imagine how much of ignorance is prevalent in the entire world. To dispel this ignorance, the Supreme Lord personally comes and instructs the Bhagavad Gita. The Supreme Lord sends his devotees who appear as acharyas and they enlighten people. You are not the body, you are not the mind, you are the spirit soul. So what does it mean for people? What is the benefit for people if they try to understand their spirit soul? It means that the real person inside the body is deathless, does not have death, need not fear any material danger, because that material danger cannot affect the soul, does not touch the soul. Even in the biggest natural calamity, nothing happens to the soul. It's only the body or the mind that is affected, influenced, becomes incapacitated, etc. But soul is completely different in substance than matter. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is explained in the second chapter, the soul cannot be burnt by fire, cannot be wet by water, cannot be destroyed by any weapon. So, the soul's characteristics are wonderful, as described in the Bhagavad Gita, and as we can ourselves experience if we become properly situated in Krishna consciousness, we can experience that we are separate from this body and mind, and we have nothing to do with anything material. Our business should be with something spiritual, like that. So that will be explained in detail as we proceed further. But here just the point is made that one cannot be cheerful by nature unless one is factually seated in self-realization, which is transcendental to the material body and mind. One cannot be seated in self-realization. Not possible. Sorry. One cannot be cheerful by nature. Our nature is, we are Satchidananda. We are filled with Ananda, naturally, by our original constitutional position. But now, being covered by this body and mind, we cannot experience our original nature of being always joyful, blissful, happy under all situations. We cannot experience that. We are affected by this body and mind covering, and this body and mind covering gives us a feeling of either happiness or distress based on so many other factors. In the next verse, Narada is telling Vyasadeva, your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled, and there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. This is the third verse. In this verse, Narada is telling Vyasa that your work which you have done of compiling the varieties of Vedic literature, among them Mahabharata is really a great and wonderful work. Mahad Adbhutam. Mahadadbhutam, Kritavan Bharatam. Vyasadeva has compiled the Mahabharata to teach the Vedic knowledge to people who are not able to understand the Vedas, who are not able to study the Vedas because they are less intelligent class of people in the society. So for them he has prepared the Mahabharata, which contains all Vedic sequences elaborately explained. The Vedas are giving a systematic program of self-realization for the human beings. But the language is difficult and the presentation is very scholarly. So therefore, for such people who cannot understand the Vedas, cannot comprehend the Vedas, for them the Mahabharata is prepared by Vyasadeva, the great learned sage. Vyasadeva, he's prepared the Mahabharata. And that is being appreciated and praised by Narada. Then in the fourth verse, Narada says further to Vyasadeva, you have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? So Narada is questioning again Vyasadeva, why are you thinking that you are not worked sufficiently when you have done such great work as compiling the Mahabharata for the less intelligent people in order to guide them in self-realization, and you have even compiled the Vedanta Sutra. And that Vedanta Sutra is a greatly scholarly work. And in that Vedanta Sutra, the absolute truth is described as impersonal Brahman, fully explained with reasoning, logic, very brilliantly presented by Vyasadeva. So what is Vedanta Sutra? Vedanta Sutra is the essence of all the Vedas. It is the essence of all the Vedas. And it is actually one work which explains the philosophy of the absolute truth, understanding the absolute truth. Philosophically, it is presented, this Vedanta Sutra. So that Vedanta Sutra is the greatest work of Vyasadeva. It's acknowledged by all great Vedic scholars. It's acknowledged the greatest work of Vyasadeva is the compilation of Vedanta Sutra. So there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. In spite of this, why should he lament? So that will be clearly pointed out by Narada in the future verses. And regarding the Vedanta Sutra, Srila Prabhupada explains the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra, it's also called Brahma Sutra, compiled by Sri Vyasadeva, is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature. What is the impersonal absolute feature? The supreme absolute truth is understood or realized in three different ways. The first way of realizing or understanding the absolute truth is that the absolute truth is impersonal Brahman. Impersonal feature. It is one impersonal feature called Brahman or Brahma Jyoti. That Brahma Jyoti or Brahman is the goal of the impersonal philosophers, the Mayavadis, the impersonalists, the Advaita Vedantis, the Advaitavadis. For them, the only understanding they have of the absolute truth is that absolute truth is Brahman or impersonal Brahman. So this impersonal Brahman is very nicely explained in the Vedanta Sutra. And it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. There is no book or no work which is compared with the Vedanta Sutra. Undoubtedly, it is a great scholarly work by Vyasadeva. It covers the subject of eternity and the methods are scholarly. The subject matter is what is eternal and what is not eternal, what is temporary. So that is very nicely covered in this presentation of the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva. So this Vedanta Sutra is explaining the impersonal Brahman. And this Vedanta Sutra, lot of great acharyas have written commentary. Shankaracharya has written a commentary. Madhvacharya has written a commentary. Ramanujacharya has written a commentary. Vishnu Swami has written a commentary. Nimbaraka Acharya has written a commentary. Baladev Vidyabhushan, among the Gaudiya Vaishnava scholars, he is the greatest scholar, one of the greatest scholars. He has written a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra like that. So, Vedanta Sutra explains the Vedic message in a very reasonable way, and it definitely establishes the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva need not lament because he has insufficiently worked on presenting the Vedic message to the less intelligent people and to different classes of people in an easily understandable way. So therefore, what is the cause of Vyasadeva's disappointment or feeling insufficiency? It is already hinted by Narada, and it is told by Prabhupada in the beginning itself of this chapter that Narada will point out that the cause for Vyasadeva's dissatisfaction is not because he is lacking in transcendental scholarship, not because he has done insufficient work in the matter of presenting the Vedic essence among the ordinary people or among the people of this world, not because of that, but because he has not sufficiently glorified pure devotional service in all his literatures which is compiled other than the Bhagavatam. So this is a background for why Narada will instruct Vyasadeva to compile the Bhagavatam. Narada's instruction to Vedavyasa is explained here.